Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. While you guys squabble over politics or family feuds or whatever, I have a feeling many houses in the Commonwealth of Kentucky are going to squabble over this game. It is another edition of the Governor's Cup. Louisville hosting Kentucky. I'm Tyler Greever with Eric Crawford and Rick Bozich for WDRB Sports. Guys, Kentucky's owned this rivalry recently. Louisville's lost 4 straight. They've lost 6 of 8. The Tide, though, if we're going to go into this, Louisville's a 7-point favorite. It feels like it's swinging in their favor this year.
Well, they've been a favorite before. They were a favorite last year, and I believe the year before. So we've had this deal where Louisville was the team that people, at least in Vegas, were trying to get the money bet on. This is a different feel, I think, because Kentucky, we're starting to feel some dysfunction. They lost a game at South Carolina that they really didn't have any business losing. And I think that, you know, Rick, it's just a situation where our big question coming into this game for me is what Kentucky team are we going to see?
Yeah, you're right. You're talking about some tweets that came out of the locker room after the game. It's been an unsettling second half of the season for Kentucky as it is. Let's remember they were 5-0 after they beat Florida. We were at that game and thought this was the 9 or 10 win team. Well, they've only won 1 game since then, and it was at Mississippi State. So I wonder, it's a big motivational challenge for Mark Stoops with a team that's going south and a group of guys that have known nothing but beating Louisville. I mean, he can't say you've never beaten those guys. You got to get ready to play. How invested are they going to be in the game on Saturday?
Yeah, and at the same time, Louisville's got, you know, they not only locked up a bowl game, they've locked up the ACC championship game. It's a rare situation where Louisville knows it's got one more game to play after this. The way Jeff Brom has talked this week, there's no danger of the coaches or anyone else diminishing the importance of this game. He went so far as to say this is more important than any other game we're going to play the rest of the season, and he's right about that.
And that's been a big question for Louisville fans the past couple of years. A criticism of Scott Satterfield was they didn't feel like him and that coaching staff took this game seriously enough. But that's such a thing that's hard to quantify. But does that really have an impact this year? You can't find a guy who this rivalry means more to than Jeff Brom and Chris Barkley and a bunch of guys on this staff.
You know, I think it's important during the week in terms of how invested are they in preparing. On Saturday, both teams will be fired up at the beginning of the game. The emotion wears off pretty quickly, and then it's who executes and who plays better and who practices better during the week and who has the better game plan. You know, I think the concern I have for Louisville is their defense didn't play well against Miami. And that's been the rock foundation. The running game, the defense has been the foundation of this team all year. Can they get that back to stopping Ray Davis, to putting a lot of pressure on Devin Leary and making him throw interceptions, which he's done this year, and play the kind of defense they need to play to win the game?
Well, and they were playing against a more talented offense. And let's face it, they haven't played some of the best offenses in the country this year. So we know Ray Davis is talented. We know Kentucky's got a pretty good offensive line when it comes to the run game, or at least we think that. We know what Devin Leary can do, but Kentucky offensively has not really gotten out of the starting gate this year. They run fewer plays than any other team in Power 5. They're slow, they're ponderous, they stay in the huddle forever, they don't get up to the line of scrimmage. So really what Kentucky's offense brings to this game, we don't know. But I'll say that, and I'll agree with you, the one thing Mark Stoops has done particularly well at Kentucky, his team approaches this game well. They have fun. They have fun in this game, and they have fun beating Louisville. At least that's been the case last 5 or 6 years. You can see it in the way they approach it. They're looser, they're more confident, and we'll see if that carries into this year.
Yeah, to Rick's point about Louisville's defense, they've actually given up 100 yards rushing and 300 yards passing in back-to-back games for the first time all year. So maybe they've taken a little bit of a step back, but I think I feel redundant about this because I always come back to this, but the battle in the trenches seems to be the biggest line of demarcation between these two programs in recent years, and I thought Louisville would be better in that last year. They were not. If you're looking at the numbers and who's on those lines, you might be inclined to give the edge to Louisville again this year, but it just hasn't played out that way in these games.
You're right. I mean, the last 4 years, you could just walk down the field before the game and say, Kentucky had better dudes, bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic dudes. The gap has closed a little bit, but they still have, you know, if you look at athletic talent, I would say across the lines, Kentucky talent is probably a little bit better than Louisville's talent. What Louisville has an advantage, I think, is in the skill positions and the ability for them to run the ball and pass the ball. They've got a really good balance in their offensive attack. And Jeff Brom's had a great feel for this season for against which opponent you push the button of running the ball or passing the ball. He showed it many times. He really showed it against Miami by bringing the tight end into the system.
Yeah, I think, look, we know nobody's bigger than Deion Walker at Kentucky. He's the biggest guy out there, and one of the more athletic guys
He's
out
making
there.
the headlines this
I mean,
week, too.
yeah, and so it's going to be a physical challenge for Louisville. I think one of the good things that Louisville has going for it is that they got Jack Plummer going at quarterback. He was really good in the fourth quarter last week. If that Jack Plummer comes out and plays, Louisville's recipe for success this year has been score first, shut the other team down in the first quarter, get a lead, gear your defense toward being able to stop the other team's run and make that happen and build on the lead, and you're good. And they've executed that beautifully through most of the season. Can they do that against Kentucky? We'll see.
Is there a position group for either team that you focus on and say that's the group that's got to play well for either UK or U of L to win this game?
For Louisville, I'm going to say offensive line and running backs because it's been so critical of the way they played. We know the one game that they lost was they couldn't run the ball with George Jordan against Pittsburgh. Garendo has been tremendous over the second half of the season. He might even be a little bit better than Jordan. So I want to see him be able to run the ball, establish dominance at the point of attack. When you know you can run the ball against the other team, I think it gives you an extra level of confidence that you can score and move the ball when you need to.
It's been demoralizing.
Yeah. It's an adage in this rivalry that the leading rusher for the winning team usually has more rushing yards than the entire losing team, if you go back and look. Doesn't always hold true, but most years it does hold true. But I'm going to say wide receiver, because if Kentucky's wide receivers come in and play a good game, that's a dynamic they've not had for most of the season, and they've had drops, they've been inconsistent. If they come in and play the way they can, Barryon Brown, Dane Key, Tavion Robinson's been pretty consistent, but those other guys, if they play better, that's something in Kentucky's favor. And frankly, I think we can say the same thing for Louisville's wideouts, because they, because of injury, haven't had kind of the impact that we've seen. We saw Louisville go away from the passing game a little bit when the running backs got going. But I think the team in this game that can throw the ball better may be the team that has the edge.
All right, so we say all of that to come to the moment of truth for predictions. I don't know if it's a moment of truth for a prediction in sports, because we get so many wrong these days, but what are you going with for this one?
I'm going to go with Louisville. Excuse me, I'm all choked up. It's not that big of a deal. 24-17, I'm going to go with the Cards.
You've got them by a touchdown. I'm going Louisville 28-24. I think they win the game. I don't know if they cover it at 7 point or whatever the spread, whatever the spread winds up. Yeah.
I'm going to take Louisville with the spread. I think it's 31-21, and I tweeted this, but the reason I say this, and I did not anticipate saying this, is that Louisville is playing better complementary football than Kentucky is. If the offense has had an off game, the defense picks it up, and vice versa, and then the special teams making plays. Last week, we're looking up guys on the roster making plays who I hadn't even heard of before last week, to be completely honest. Kentucky right now, I'm a bit concerned about the overall vibes with the program. It just seems a little bit off, and it's weird to say that a first-year coach seems to have his guys more bought in than a guy like Mark Stoops, who's been at Kentucky forever. But guys, I just think that's how it is right now, and I'm pretty shocked to say that, honestly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Should be interesting to watch. I think noon kickoff, I think favors Kentucky. I think 7 p.m., the way that stadium gets charged at night, we'll see if they can create that same atmosphere. But I think a big-time crowd at this game of some of the bigger crowds we've seen could also have an effect for Louisville, not so much for Kentucky, but a positive effect for Louisville.
For sure. UK will probably play with some desperation. Louisville trying to just keep the ball rolling, and we know they got a big game next week. Can't get caught looking ahead, and I don't think they will with how this game has gone in recent years. But we hope you guys have a happy holiday, and of course, enjoy the game. For Rick Bozich, Eric Crawford, I'm Tyler Greever. Thanks for watching.